So just to recap, we're speaking about how the Torah embodies God's wisdom, and by studying the Torah, we are connecting to God himself. And the study of the Torah is not just through learning, but also through doing. When we do a mitzvah, then we connect completely with God. I think last week we took it slightly in a different direction, and we spoke about how every letter of the Torah is different. Even the crowns of the letters are different. That too is part of God himself. But the message in that is that just as there are multiple letters and diverse letters in the Torah, so too there are diverse representatives of God in the Torah, in the world. Sorry, those representatives are us. And we spoke about this idea that the Torah, in a way, the 600,000 letters of the Torah symbolize the 600,000 root souls of the Jewish people. And when a Torah is not kosher, if one letter is missing, so too the Jewish people are not complete, are not kosher, so to speak, if one person is missing. And that emphasizes the idea that we have to seek harmony more than unity, because unity implies that I want the other to be like me. I have to be one with the other. We have to enter this melting pot. But harmony means that I accept the diversity of the other and I respect it, just as the letters of the Torah respect each other. They don't try to force each other to be like them, but quite the opposite. They encourage the others to be the other, because by being the other, the Torah then is complete. If the Vav tries to be like the Gimel, then the Torah is not kosher. So we spoke about this idea, how we should seek harmony much more than unity. That was the big idea last week. Let's continue. Like you said, Margot, the middle of page 136 with the words, and since the Torah and its commandments. Does anyone want to read? Anyone? Okay, Margot, go for it.
I'll read, that's fine.
Thank you so much.
And since the Torah and its commandments clothe all 10 attributes of the soul, the 10 attributes of the soul constitute a person's inner structure, and for each attribute there is a corresponding garment of the Torah. Chokhmah, Bina, and Dat clothe themselves in the wisdom of the Torah, Chesed in the performance of positive commandments, Gevura in the observance of the prohibitions, and so with the rest of the soul's 10 attributes.
Right.
And all of the 613 organs from head to foot. Not only the soul's 10 primary attributes, but also each of its 613 particular organs has its corresponding mitzvah in the Torah. There are 613 mitzvot for the soul's 613 components. And because such a perfect correlation exists between the soul and the Torah, the soul can clothe itself in the Torah to the point that it is all together and literally bound up in the bundle of life with God. Into, should I continue?
Yeah, maybe just this last line here. Yeah, go ahead.
Entering into the essence of the Torah and becoming utterly united and identified with it is a union that involves the soul's every trait and faculty.
Right. Okay, so just to explain a little bit. So we have, we've mentioned this in the past. So there are 10 Sefirot, 10 divine attributes. We each have possessed those 10 attributes. Those are the 10 attributes of the soul. There are 3 intellectual attributes, Chokhmah, Bina, and Dat. And then you have the 7 emotional attributes. Now, the Torah, in fact, speaks to each of those attributes. Now, when one studies the Torah, obviously he utilizes his intellectual attributes, the Chokhmah, Bina, and Dat, or the wisdom, intelligence, and knowledge. And that is what, that part of the person is what then is connected and becomes one with God. When a person does a mitzvah, if it's a mitzvah of kindness, then he uses his kindness attribute. Again, there are 7 emotional attributes. So depending on the mitzvah that you are doing, you are using one of those attributes to unify it with God, with the Torah, and thereby with God himself. When we prevent yourself from doing a sin, then you're using Gevura. That's the emotional attribute of severance, of justice. And that's when you can connect to God with even not doing something, which is interesting, because this points to the fact that we can be connected to God. Literally, we can be connected to God 24/7 at every single moment of the day, whether we are doing something or not doing something, whether we're doing something and then connecting that doing with God himself. And again, it could be something neutral. It doesn't have to be a mitzvah per se. It could be eating. But if I'm eating in order then to use the energy in order to serve God, then that food, that action of eating connects me to God. And again, it could be not doing things, even sleeping. You can still be connected to God while sleeping. How so? You're not doing anything. But that's because you are using the energy that sleep gives you thereafter in order to wake up in the morning and come to the soul class and study some Tanya. So you're doing a mitzvah by sleeping. So again, you can literally be connected to God 24/7 because God gives us the ability to connect to him with one of the 10 attributes or multiple of the 10 attributes at any given time. And that I think is really the goal of man, to be so in tune with God that at every moment we are connecting to him with at least one of our 10 attributes. Now, I want to develop this and connect this to a big idea that Tanya mentioned before, and he continues to mention much later on also, where he speaks about the idea that everyone really, every human being, because we're different, because we have a separate mission in the world, we are part of we have attributes that are stronger than others. So uses the analogy of the body. Remember that some people are the heads of the body, and some people are the hearts of the body, some people are the fingernails of the body. And sometimes, and you know yourselves best, sometimes you feel like, okay, I have much more of an inclination to do heart mitzvahs, to love, to give, to be kind, to be compassionate, and so on. Maybe that refers to the idea that you are part of that heart of the Jewish body. And therefore, you want to emphasize those attributes more than others. And some people, again, are more learners of Torah. They can study all day long and learn and study and stuff. Maybe because they're part of that part of the body, of the one human body or one godly body that represents the Jewish people. But I'm saying that because it doesn't mean that if we are using only certain attributes and not necessarily others, we're not connected to God. The Tanya here is not saying that we have to use all 10 attributes to unite with God. One attribute alone is just fine, even if it's the only one that we use time and time and time again, which again relates to this idea that we have to develop this harmony. But some people, I personally, sometimes judge those who study Torah all day long. I say to myself, really, is that the way God wants us to? Now, maybe that's their mitzvah. That's their way of connecting. They're part of their head. They connect with the 3 intellectual attributes, or at least one of them. And if all 3, because the third one really implies action. That knowledge implies action. But maybe at least one of them. So, and if that's the way they connect, then great. And this is what the Tanya, I think, is saying also, is implying at least, that everyone is their way of connecting. And if we are speaking here, if it's under the theme of harmony, then we ought to respect the Gimel for being the Gimel and the Dalet for being the Dalet, and the people that connect with the intellectual attributes and the people that connect with emotional attributes in the same way. So that's really the big idea here. I want to focus a little bit on bound up in the bundle of life with God, because I think, if I'm not mistaken, let's go to the references. I think it refers to a verse in the Torah. References here are in the back. Chapter 438. Oh, no, it's
Samuel.
not. Samuel 25:29. Not the verse I was thinking of, but I don't have the Hebrew with me of the Tanya, so let me just look it up, because I know there's so much more to this verse than just a quote. But in the meantime, I want to hear anyone and everyone that may have a comment on this.
Rabbi, is Is there an itemization of the 613 organs anywhere?
That's a great story. That's a great question. So there is a book. There is a book called Sefer Charedim. And that book seeks to connect every mitzvah with a different limb of the body. It's not a book that's commonly found. I don't know if Amazon has it.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if it's translated also into any other language but Hebrew. But I do know that it does that. It seeks to do that. And I mean, it's brilliant. Doing that is really brilliant because it's true. Every organ of the body, no matter how low or how high, can be connected to God by performing a mitzvah with that organ, with that limb. Yeah.
Gonna look for it.
Yeah. Okay, so 25:29. The verse is. Okay. Yeah. Nefesh Adonit Tzurua B'Tzurah Chaim. Which is, by the way, it's interesting because that's the verse that we use for the deceased. In fact, many tombstones across the world of Jews have 5 letters engraved in them.
Right.
Right? And those letters stand for this verse, Teheh Nafshot Tzurua B'Tzurah Chaim. Taf Nun Tzadik Bet Hey.
Yeah.
Which means may their soul be bound in the bond of life. And it's interesting, just the context of it. Maybe alluding to this idea that when we connect to God, then we are bound in this bond of life, and that bond of life continues on and on and on to eternity, even when we're no longer here. So it's stronger than this world. It's stronger than the life that we have in this world, than the material world altogether. And it's a bond that continues on to carry us. There's a beautiful verse in the Talmud, a passage in the Talmud says, Ashrei mi sheba lekan v'talmudo biyado. Happy is the person who comes here, referring to the world to come after 120, and his study is in his hand. So he comes with a baggage. He doesn't come empty-handed. The baggage of study. Now, as mentioned, we said that study is not just the learning itself, but study is the mitzvah also. When you do a mitzvah, that's the ultimate study of the Torah. So happy is the man who comes with a baggage of Talmud in his hand, of learning, of true learning, when after 120. And again, I think this refers to this because you are bound up in the bundle of life when you study Torah. That comes with you. Thank you for sending the link, Jordan, to this. You found it?
No, this was from Rabbi Eisen.
Oh, okay. Oh, thank you. Oh, very good. So here's another book, In My Flesh I See God, that relates the mitzvahs to the body. Is that what it is, Rabbi Eisen? Yeah? So we'll send it to the whole group. Let's send it to the whole group. Why not?
Yeah.
Thank you. I don't want to be put on the spot, but it's for the benefit of everybody. There we go. I'm resending it to the whole group. That's another book, maybe. Is it Sefer Charedim or not? In English? No. Okay, fine. All right. By the way, I mean, there are studies, right? I think it was at a Cleveland University or something like that. I remember reading a study about tefillin and how the tefillin actually hit all of the acupuncture points that one needs to hit in order to live a balanced life. So you have books like that. Yeah, I mean, you have at least studies like that again show the correlation of the Torah itself to those parts of the body. It's interesting to note also, but there are mitzvahs that relate to just one part of the body, like tefillin we just mentioned. There are mitzvahs that relate to the entire body. I can think of 2 mitzvahs. The mitzvah of mikvah. Mikvah is the whole body being submerged. And then you have the mitzvah of sukkah. When you sit in the sukkah, you perform that also with your whole body. So you also have mitzvahs that not don't necessarily relate to just one part of the body, but quite the opposite. They have this effect on the entirety of the body. But
Okay, can I,
yes,
about the book?
yes, Rabbi Isaac.
I think I read it years ago. I think I divested myself of it when I moved, but it's an anthology of rabbinic insights that link parts of the body to different acts and things like that. It was really fairly interesting. If I remember it, it must have been interesting. But again, when I moved, I think I divested myself of it. I had to put two offices together into one. I ended up with 1.5.
Huh.
I have a question now.
Yes.
And the question is, what is the role of intentionality in all of this? In other words, if I go to 613 and have dinner, yes, I ate a kosher meal, but did I fulfill the mitzvah of eating kosher? Just because I like their food? Or do I have to say I will only eat, or I want to eat in a kosher restaurant and therefore I will go there?
Right.
And the reason I ask that is the ambiguity of the language. Maybe I'm overreading, but if you go back to page 136,
Right.
It says, and since the Torah and its commandments clothe all 10 attributes of the soul, so that seems to me the Torah and commandments are the actors here, whereas later on in the paragraph it said the attributes, Chokhmah Bina Dot, clothe themselves. So which way is this flowing, so to speak? What's the role of intentionality?
Right. That's a great question. So if we go back to this idea that not all 10 attributes have to be clothed with God or have to be connected with that mitzvah, then maybe there is not a big role for intentionality when we do mitzvahs, because I'm just using my hand and not my mind for the power of intention behind the hand. I'm still connecting that hand to God. I'm still doing tzedakah, for example, and doing that mitzvah. And there's not that attribute connects me with God. So even if there's not much intention, I would say that you're still connecting to God. Now, absolutely, if the more intention there is, the more connection there is, because the more attributes then are used. And then the more wholesome that connection. But there is still a connection happening with or without intention. I would, yeah. Now, I would say this, and then I think that it's, at the end of the day, our connection with God is a relationship. And I would say it's the same in relationships. If I buy flowers for my wife with intention or without intention, then yes, with intention will make her happy, but even without intention, it will still make her happy. Then she has the flowers she wants. So it's better.
But there is a difference. But there's a big difference.
No doubt.
A big difference.
Yeah, and I have a big difference. I mean, depends how you measure big.
True.
Right.
So yeah. I have some observations here. Number one, when he's referring to the soul here, I'm assuming he's referring to the God soul and not the animal soul.
Yeah. The God soul is the soul that can connect to God, right? Yeah.
You said we can be connected to God 24/7. I think we are connected to God 24/7, but it comes with intention and without intention, with knowing and without knowing. But I think we're always connected to God. That's another observation. 613, what a magical number that is, because if we boil that down, what does it equal? 1. 6 plus 3 is 9, plus 1 is 10, 1 plus 0 is 1, the oneness of God.
Very nice.
The other thing is, just so everybody knows, the diat is not an official 10 sefirot. It is an added sefirot at the end. It is, so just to mention that.
Yeah. I mean, the truth is that it depends which Kabbalist you follow. Some do include it. I know Rabbi Chaim Vital includes it in one of his charts. It was the student.
I've not seen it not included on a chart, but it's but it's also highlighted or unhighlighted that
Right.
it's not part of the 10
It's a
Sefirot.
complex one. Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, thank you for mentioning that. So I just want to go back to the point you made that you can be connected with or without. And I don't know again if that includes intention or not. But since we just had his yahrzeit on the 2nd of Shvat, which was on Friday, the yahrzeit of Reb Zusha, the famous Hasidic Jew, who was, by the way, who was friends with Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Liadi. In fact, when Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Liadi wrote this book, the Tanya, he sent a copy first to Reb Zusha for his approbation. And Reb Zusha exclaimed famously, "Wow, I can't believe how Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Liadi was able to take such a big God and put it into such a small book." But that was his exclamation. But Reb Zusha, as there are many stories about Reb Zusha, he was a very pious Jew, who, along with his brother Reb Elimelech, took upon himself this self-exile. And also for reasons of humility, and also for reasons of saying, well, you know what, God, you want to punish the Jewish people? I'll punish myself. I'll take that punishment upon myself. I'm going to go with my brother throughout Poland and not sleep in one place for more than one night. And during those travels, he was thrown into a jail just for no reason, maybe for trespass, I don't know, no reason, maybe Jew hatred. And, you know, it's a famous story. But Reb Zusha and Rabbi Elimelech were put in this room, in this jail with some 50 inmates. And there was a bucket in the middle of the room. And that bucket was the bathroom, the restroom. And Reb Zusha starts to cry. And Rabbi Elimelech says, "Why are you crying, Zusha? It's not like you." Zusha says, "No, I'm crying because this place stinks because of this bucket. And I can't pray. And this will be the first time in my life in which I won't be able to pray because God, you know, there's a halacha that says you can't pray in a place that stinks." So Rabbi Elimelech beautifully, and this is the point that Tanya is making, tells Reb Zusha, well, you shouldn't cry. Because the same God that tells you that you should pray is the same God that tells you that you shouldn't pray where it stinks. So whether you are praying or whether you're not praying because God tells you you're not praying, you're still connecting to God. So you should be happy. And Reb Zusha says, you know what, you're right. I'm connecting to God by an inaction, not by an action. Like the Tanya is saying here. And of course, like two Hasidic brothers, they start to sing. And they start to dance. They're so happy. And they started dancing, and soon enough, there was a whole circle of dance with all these inmates. And the warden hears the commotion from his office, and he's mad. He storms into this room, says, "What's happening here?" And one of the inmates says, "It's these brothers here." Says, well, what's the problem? He says, "It's the bucket." And they explained to us that there was a pre-bucket relationship with God and not a post-bucket relationship with it. It's a whole thing. It's a whole cause for their joy. So the warden is so upset, he goes to the bucket and throws it out the window. The circle of dancing stops, and then Rabbi Elimelech says to Zusha, "Now you can pray." But it's one of my favorite Hasidic stories because it shows not just the Hasidic spirit, but also shows this point that doesn't mean that if we're lacking something, that it changes our relationship with God. Sometimes we connect to God with action and sometimes without action. And as long as we're doing what God wants us to do, then we're connected. Sometimes God wants us to eat. He wants us to sleep. He wants us to do those mundane things. He wants us to not pray. But that's a deeper level of connection. In fact, I'll go deeper. Kabbalah teaches, and Rabbi Yitzchak Luria has many teachings about this. The Kabbalah teaches that, in fact, the negative commandments are create a deeper connection with God. They come from a much higher place than the positive commandments. Why so? Because the positive commandments come to draw light in this world, right? Each time you do a mitzvah, you're drawing some godliness in this world. But the fact that you're able to draw them down in this world that is supposed to be the most contracted world, right? Based on this idea of contraction, of tzimtzum that we've spoken about, the world that is as limited as could be, means that you are drawing down God, but also in a very limited way. God has to contract himself in order to come down to this world. The negative commandments have such awesome lights, such powerful lights, that they can't be drawn down to this world. They can't suffer this contraction.
Mm.
And therefore, the only way we can connect to those awesome lights is by not doing, not by doing. Because those lights are too strong. You'll never be able to draw them down. So how do you connect to them? By not doing. So the negative commandments at their source are higher than the positive commandments. So sometimes by not doing, you're actually connecting in a deeper way, because these are higher lights, as Kabbalah teaches. So it's important to remember, because I know that we were action-based, and that's the world we live in also. We have to be doing and doing and doing. And sometimes the human being has to be a human being, not a human doing, by not doing.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyhow, that's Reb Zusha. I'll share another story very quickly that I just read on Shabbat about Zusha. He was such an interesting fellow, but really a giant of a man. But apparently, Reb Zusha, and I don't know if this is connected or not, but it doesn't matter, in his honor, since we just had his yard site. But apparently, Reb Zusha was also a big scholar. And when he couldn't understand something, he would start crying. And he would say, Ribono Shel Olam, Master of the universe, look at Zusha. Look how ignorant this man is. He can't even understand this and this part. And he would mention the part of the Torah that he could not understand. But because of his cry and his deep pain, he would just fall asleep. And then in his sleep, they would reveal to him the answer of the question that he had, that he cried for. Anyway, one day, he walked into the house of study, the Bet Midrash, where both Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Liari were, and Rabbi Levi Yitzchak of Berdichev, another great Hasidic master who lived in those times. And Rabbi Levi Yitzchak and Rabbi Shneur Zalman were studying a part of the Rambam of Maimonides. And Reb Zusha walks in and he says to them, what are you studying? We have a question on the Rambam, whether it should be interpreted this way or that way. And Reb Zusha says, what's the question? And they shared the question with him, and again, he started crying. And he said, gosh, Reb Zusha, he's so ignorant. Master of the universe, have mercy on him. He can't even understand this part of the Torah of Maimonides. And then he went and he fell asleep. And then Maimonides revealed himself to him. And he said to him, go tell your friends that the answer is this way. And he woke up and he told his friends, Levi Yitzchak and Shneur Zalman, he says, well, you, Reb Zusha, we believe. You have that ability to awaken Maimonides and have him share with you the answer. But why am I sharing the story? Because, I mean, to me at least, it shared the lesson of sometimes we don't want things really deeply. Yes, we want Mashiach, for example. We want peace. But if we really, really wanted peace deeply, and it would cause us to cry, then something would happen. It would shake the heavens in a way that maybe nothing else could shake the heavens. And when things don't really happen, maybe it just demands for us to cry even more. It's like the story of the Chafetz Chaim, Rabbi Yisrael Kogan of the early 1900s, who once sent a delegation to the Prime Minister of Poland in order to try and change the decree against kosher slaughtering, shchita, that he had just banned. And the delegation came back to the Chafetz Chaim and said, sorry, we failed miserably. He said, why? The delegation said, because we had an interpreter, we spoke Yiddish, he didn't understand us. The prime minister, we didn't understand the prime minister, and the whole conversation didn't go well, so we failed. The Chafetz Chaim says, yes, but did any one of you faint? Said, no, why? If one of you had fainted, you would have been able to influence him. And sometimes it demands of us to really ask for more. So going back to the intention question, Rabbi Eisen, I would say yes, that, you know, technically speaking, intention, it doesn't matter too much. But if we are truly trying to connect and truly to change things, change ourselves, and thereby change the world, then we need intention. And in a way, we need also much more than that. We need a faint. We need a cry. And that's the ultimate connection. And then I think it's way, not just the 10 attributes that are connected, but in a way it's much more than that. It's the 5 levels of the soul. 10 attributes really relate to the 3 levels of the soul. And you know, that we spoke about. But when you faint, then it's all the 5 levels. You know, the Baal Shem Tov, the founder of the Hasidic movement, famously said that everything in life can be created without passion, except for one thing. And that is life, human beings. Life itself can be created without passion. If you want to create a change, real life, then you need passion. And you need that whole, you need a faint. Huh. Yeah.
Can you quickly just give a bullet for each of those 5 attributes?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. So you have the lowest one is nefesh, which really means being. I would use the word psyche. Then ruach, which means spirit, or you know, the spiritual part of the person. Then you have neshama, which is the soul itself. Then you have chaya, which is the source of life, and that's what it means. And yechida, which is what they say in Yiddish, the pinteleyid, that point within a person that is forever connected to God. No matter how a person falls, how much a person falls, that point is always there. And if awakened, it transforms the person altogether. Now, most people experience the first 3 levels. As they are living in this world, we experience the first 3 levels. Very few, by the way, operate constantly on the neshama level, on the soul itself. But most people sometimes experience that soul level, but very few experience the chaya yechida, that complete awakening, and that creates an utter transformation. Yeah. Pintelayid, yeah. We all have it, but it's dormant. Some people experience it once or twice in their lives, and that's enough. Some people never experience it. Some people experience it more than twice or 3 times.
Quick comment on that, if I may.
Yeah.
What and I don't say I'm right on anything I say. These are all my personal kind of things.
Please, Ronnie, please.
But I find that there's a vibrational frequency that, and especially find it during, could find it during prayer, but during meditation. And when I hit that frequency, I feel that it's a frequency that's being broadcasted out by God. And I feel that connection, that frequency is there. Finding that frequency is what I've done.
Right. No, there's certainly. You mean feeling that frequency? Also.
Just being
Yeah.
that frequency.
Right.
Being that frequency.
Right. It's interesting because say this, and I noticed this firsthand, my own eyes, but I think the righteous operate certainly on the neshama level, and some also on the chaya chida, but the Lubavitcher Rebbe, Rabbi Schneerson of blessed memory, there would be 2 types of teachings that he would deliver to, you know, in Farbrengens, to the whole world. And most of them today are written down over volumes and volumes of books, but they were what were called sichot, which were conversations or discourses, and they were deeper teachings that were called ma'amarim, which are really very deep and profound Hasidic discourses that are based on conveying really some of the deepest ideas of Kabbalah, but also in a very practical way. Now, when he would recite a ma'amar, there would be a nigun, a very special Hasidic melody that would precede it to get people in tune, and then he would deliver the ma'amar. When he would deliver the ma'amar, he would hold a handkerchief in his hand. I saw this white handkerchief. He would wrap it around his hand. And the reason he would do that is because when you go to the mime, when you recite a mimer, your soul really goes all the way to the Chaya Chida and could expire, could leave this world. So he needed something to pull him down, and that was the handkerchief. By the way, the same is told about Rabbi Elimelech of Lizhansk, the brother of Reb Zusha that we just mentioned. Then he would, when he would pray, he would look at his watch very often. Why? In order to bring himself down, to come back to the time frame of this world. Now, most people that I know, when they pray, including myself, when we look at our watch, it's for different reasons. But Rabbi Elimelech, it was different, to bring him back to this world. So those that are really in tune can experience that, you know, almost in an intentional way, and they need those, you know, the vibrancy that he's speaking about. They need those materialistic things to bring them back down. By the way, the Lubavitcher Rebbe suffered a heart attack in 1978, and for a while, he had a whole medical team in his office upstairs that were monitoring his heart. And when he delivered those discourses, and when he delivered a mimer, the line of the heart went straight, as if, God forbid, he had died. So the doctors came rushing into the room, see what happened to our Rebbe, and they saw him speaking as if nothing, nothing had happened, because he was in a different world. It was outside. It was a, how do they call it? An out-of-body experience. But so the righteous experience that quite often. Halevai, if only we too can experience this from time to time.
Amen.